at the same time, we had a viral moment, Krystal, schooling some people on the Bill Maher real-time experience. Do you want to describe it for people before we throw to the clip?
Yeah, so as you guys probably know, I flew on to LA over the weekend and I went on Real Time with Bill Maher. It's I don't know why that show stresses me out. Mm-hmm. It's a very different environment.
Lights and audience and all
yeah,
that
there's
stuff.
live audience and you fly all the way out there to do it. Right. And you know that you got to be super, super punchy to get your points in because
it's like TV.
Yeah, and and you know it's also going to be combative and confrontational, which stresses me out too. And we're so used to having the time and space
to talk
and go down any avenue we want and think out loud and kind of like, you know, and have things taken in good faith and all those things. And like this, you gotta be on it on it. So I was extremely stressed out going into this, but ultimately, you know, we talked some about January 6th and that conversation was fine. You know, I wanted to talk about some of the more underlying issues because that's what we do, and that wasn't really. There wasn't really the time and space for that.
Interesting.
But then we got into inflation, and I got very combative, I guess, with the, in my mind, very simplistic explanation that this is all just about the money that was given to working class people. And the point I wanted to make, which I think is something that you guys are familiar with watching this show, is okay, we can talk about that, and I'm not dishonest enough to say that that has nothing to do with the inflation we're facing, but we just completely ignore the trillions of dollars that went to the top that helped to fuel inflation. Somehow that's fine, but God forbid you get a stimmy check in your bank account. So that was the point I was trying to make, and that was also the moment that has gone now at this point actually super viral. So let's take a look at that.
Well, I mean, part of this inflationary problem is because we put too much money into the economy. There's way too much government spending, and that's why we have inflation. So that's a large part of that.
It's
just basic economics. And
that is not basic economics. We had this thing called a pandemic. We had a supply chain crisis, and by the way, there's a war in Ukraine.
It played a role.
So to act like the only reason we have problems now is because people got a little bit of money in their bank account is just not honest.
And a little bit of money, they got more than we spent in World War II. So don't act like
hold on. Hold on.
Don't act like, you said don't act. Don't act like we had to react to the pandemic exactly the way we did. We had to spend $6 trillion.
Okay, but how about the trillions that the Federal Reserve shot at Wall Street? For some reason, people don't get upset about that.
How much?
And that fueled the trillions of dollars the Federal Reserve shot at Wall Street to backstop the stock market and the bond market. No one gets upset about that, even though that was a massive
I don't know what
factor in
you're talking
inflation.
about. What do you mean shot at Wall Street? When are we talking about?
We're talking about buying assets, buying stocks, buying bonds, buying treasury bills so that they expand the balance sheet. This is during the crisis, the coronavirus crisis. When the stock market crashed, that is what the Fed did. They went into action. They shot
trillions of dollars. But the stock market didn't crash during COVID.
Now it's crashing. It's crashing now.
It crashed, and the Fed came in and backstopped it. That's what happened.
What, it crashed and we never heard about it?
No, it crashed. Go back and look at it.
I think
it fell off a cliff. The Treasury bond market stopped functioning, and the Fed took extraordinary action it's never taken in history.
Somehow
no one gets upset.
The first week of
Somehow nobody gets upset about the rich people who got tons of money and tons of support, way more than working class people did.
Sure
but
they do.
My God, people were able to feed their kids and they had a little bit of money in their bank accounts. It was the worst thing in the world.
No.
That is one small part of the inflation story, and is, by the way, not the only thing that we can deal with to get out of this mess.
Well, gas prices.
Biden has
is it a small part, Jamie?
Gas prices we can largely attribute to an administration that's been waging war on the fossil fuel industry.
That's ridiculous.
And now
they drilled more than everybody. I mean,
that's a talking point.
U.S. production.
No.
Okay, U.S. production is up.
Well,
it will be at record levels next year.
Okay, well,
the fossil fuel companies themselves are flush with cash, but will not invest in new drilling because they would rather give it to their shareholders.
Okay, all right,
That's the truth. So there's a lot going on there.
That's very stressful.
It
also,
is.
the stock market crashed in March of 2020. Like what? What are you talking about?
Well, I get why you might have forgotten because the Fed leapt into action, but that was such a seminal moment that really determined our trajectory everywhere since. Because remember, the politicians, it was unclear that they were going to do much of anything for anyone at the time. Remember, we were beside ourselves.
Yes.
And I'm like, they may not act at all. And then once the market crashed, that's when they were like, shit, we got to do something. And of course, the overwhelming amount went to the top, as it always does, but they had to sweeten the deal with some stuff for regular people. Remember, at the time, there were all those stories about senators who sold everything they had, who sold a bunch of their stock before the crash so they could avoid the fallout from so the crash ultimately was very short exactly because of what I tried my best to explain there in a very short period of time of the extraordinary action that the Fed ultimately took. And that's why you ended up with these dueling headlines of, oh my God, the stock market's at record levels, but meanwhile, unemployment is, also at record levels. The reason you had that dueling reality is because of the Fed's actions there. And so if you don't understand that history, you're going to have a hard time understanding what's unfolding before us right now.
Yeah, I just think that I don't know how you could have forgotten that crash. I mean, crash, even today, the headlines are all largest stock market crash since the 2020 crash of coronavirus. Actually, I just looked. 2020 market crash even has its own Wikipedia page. And actually, at the time, there were Black Monday 1, Black Thursday, and then there was Black Monday 2, where they specifically talk about how on February 17th, that's when the Asian markets began to crash as a result of the reports coming out, not only of China, but South Korea and initial lockdown procedures. That's what triggered massive market sell-off. March of 2020 leads to the eventual discussion around stimulus checks, of lockdowns. April of 2020 is when all of this gets solidified into place. By May, it's largely forgotten and cheap capital floods the system, but that was a pivotal economic time. I mean, we are going to study that period. Economists are going to study that period for decades. That is equivalent to quantitative easing post-Great Recession, equivalent to Great Depression type monetary policy. And like you said, I guess I could forgive Bill for not remembering it. But even, I mean, with great respect to Jamie Kirchick and all of that, this is the issue with not understanding markets, both oil markets and stock markets, as to the exact mechanisms. Because if you want to sit there and talk about demand inflation based upon stimulus checks and overstimulation, fine, we can have that conversation. But to what extent is it part of the current solution? Actually, not really, as we pointed out here. The stock market and the demand inflation, that stuff is mostly gone. Consumer demand as a result of stimulus checks and savings and all of that has tapered off. The current solution and to what we're grappling with is an extraordinarily different and difficult time that doesn't have a lot to do with happened in March of 2020. So
it just reminded me
discussion.
Yeah, and I think it also it reminded me I'm so used to existing in this ecosystem.
Yeah, it's different.
And and I know that you guys who watch regularly, you're very aware of this history. We talk about this stuff a lot. We've gone out of our way to really dig into kind of the workings of the Fed this year because it's so central. We've really tried to challenge ourselves to understand on a deeper level what's happening in the oil markets, what's happening with inflation, what some potential solutions are, what the truth is and what the talking points from both sides. We're not perfect. We really try to understand in depth what's happening here. But a cable news format just doesn't allow for that.
No,
it does not allow for that because.
How long was that segment? 7 minutes? On YouTube, all it said was 7 minutes.
I don't even know. Yeah. I think the entire panel discussion they said was 30 minutes. It felt like it was nothing, and we covered 3 or 4 different topics within that time period. So, and you got obviously a lot of crosstalk and getting cut off and all that stuff. So to try to make a nuanced point and explain the trajectory of how we got here and all these pieces that are going on, it's just and that's on real time. You have way more space than you do in a cable news segment.
Yeah, that's why I don't do cable.
So that's why the American people are being fed a very non-nutritious diet in terms of understanding these seminal moments that really have been instrumental in getting us to where we are and determining where we're going to go next. And that market crash and the response to it was an absolutely crucial one. So listen, I had a great experience. I'm really grateful for them having me on and giving me the ability to do my best to explain the world as I see it and some of the things that we talk about on this show. So I'm extremely grateful for that. Bill couldn't have been nicer. After the fact, they do a little get together on the patio, open bar, whatever. So I got to chat with him a little bit, and that was really nice as well. But I will tell you the other thing that was funny, which I've never done this to myself. I really have never done this to myself before, but I had such a hard time gauging whether I did well and got my points off or not. And so I really, and I hate watching myself back. I really should have watched myself back, because if I did, I would have been like, okay, I did okay. I got my points across. But I tortured myself that night, like, oh man, I think you, like, these certain moments I was replaying you should have said this, you should have said that, maybe you came off in a bad way, like maybe you're too aggressive. I really, really was torturing myself, and I've been thinking about why that is, because I really genuinely normally don't do that. Even when I have actually performed kind of poorly, I'm usually like, what are you gonna do? But I think it's because I really did feel a sense of responsibility to represent us and represent this community and like the way that we look at things and try to put that out in the world a little bit. So I really, I felt this pressure to do that, not just like for me to do my best, but to try to represent what we're doing.
I totally get what you're saying. I would also be incredibly stressed out.
I was really stressed
because, yeah, like you said, I mean, I see these people, I know these people, I've known Jamie for a long time. I don't know Bill, but I do know their worldview and all. And it's so dramatically different than all of us that dealing with it and confronting it on national television, which is, I mean, look, I'm not gonna say it's a forte because you came up more on cable, so you're used to more of the time, but not having the ability to explain myself and have to hit the talking points is the thing I hated most always about cable. And having to return to that after having the freedom here of talking in the way that we do would be very difficult. And I don't think there would be another way to do it than the way that you did, which is to have to be combative. I mean, to the extent that we ever cut things off on this show, it's because of studio time. Like literally because we're like, we have to get out of here in order to produce our show on time. That's it. It's not because, I often feel that they restrict it artificially in order to induce these results. I really do think I think it's suboptimal at the best for discussion.
The first thing I noticed when I shifted from cable news to, YouTube and to independent media is that you just have so much more space and so much more attention from the audience to lay out more complex arguments and points. When I write a monologue for cable news, it was like, I can hit one point, I can hit it a few times, that's the best you're gonna do. With this, obviously you guys know how we write our monologues, and
like 8 minutes.
We put a lot into it. They go in a lot of directions. We try to make them, complex and nuanced, and really try to get at whatever it is that we're trying to explain. So in any case, I think it was useful, judging by the reaction, which has been extraordinary.
Yeah, it went very viral.
I think it was useful to go on, even though it really stressed me out. But I am also extremely, extremely grateful for the time and the space and the attention from you guys, and 100%. And what you guys give back to us also allows us to kind of bring our best to the show. So thank you for that.
I agree.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.